Hi, Richard. Great to have you
Hello,
here.
Naimul. Hey.
Great to have you here with us today. And I think it'll be a very interesting conversation about VastAF. But before we go into VastAF, my question would be to you. Tell us about yourself, your journey in startups, investing in ecosystem, and what everything else up to VastAF.
Well, first of all, Naimul, thanks for the initiative. Thanks for your effort creating SweBAN together with other colleagues. I think it's a very important contribution to Sweden that we were lacking. Somehow we survived without it, but I think with SweBAN we will do much better. And I think it's for Sweden. I think it will be. It is quite an important element. I think for our future. I think to nurture and help startups. Make it. So thanks for that. And yeah, a little bit about myself. So I am. I have a software degree from University of Gothenburg, and I started up my career late 90s. So I'm born 66, so approaching 60 years. So my first job, I think, was as a software programmer. I did it was quite an interesting, perhaps one of my most interesting jobs, in fact, was for automatic guided vehicles. We did a control system for robots that transported goods, and I was making a small part there. Very interesting job to see all kinds of things. Also took me around the world. Sorry. But I didn't stay there for long. I've been typically, I think, through my career, I wouldn't say that I'm exactly changing job every year or so, but I've been moving around quite a bit. So Ericsson obviously is one place I had stopover at, very interesting as well. I did a lot of consultancy. I was for electronics a few years to learn a bit about manufacturing and was part of their account team. The area where just so people understand a little bit about my is that I was more into the embedded software. At least after some while, I understood that that's where I like to emphasize. For me, I think it was an area which was less crowded. So, and I found it very interesting to work in that space. So, real-time operating system, I did teaching in that as well. So somehow I picked up how that worked, TCP/IP, embedded Java, stuff like that. But over time, also, I got engaged in project management, product management, and yeah, that happens to some people that you do, and I kind of like that as well, obviously. But then I shifted over to a more commercial role. I left sort of the tech area and shifted to a fintech company. And there I took a role as a VP for product and marketing, responsible for the digital products and the digitalization. I had my own P&L, my own team, and that was quite interesting. I liked that a lot. It was meaning you have to understand your customers, your competitors, what products you need to build to make it, regulation. Yeah, that was a nice suite of stuff. And obviously, very often we got into strategic discussions on how we're going to approach certain issues with competitors or others. So that was very learning period for me as well. So all in all, I would say I am typically, if I would describe myself, I am kind of most comfortable, I think, in the intersection between commercial and technology. When I interact with IT teams or developers, they don't any longer view me as a developer. I lost, I lost that apparently. But the same thing happens when I talk to the salespeople and marketing. They don't quite recognize themselves in me either, so they say you must be a tech guy. So yeah, that's where I am, and I have a patent as well. So that's with my name on. So that's quite something I'm a little bit proud of. I'm also proud of being selected for a talent program at some point. managed to win quite a big contract in Singapore. And most of my development time, I've been based outside Sweden. I've been started up in Australia, lived there for a number of years, US. Then came home, there was a family. Then I moved to Singapore, was there for a while. And my last 10 years was in Switzerland before I managed to get back home to my hometown, Gothenburg, where I am today.
Awesome.
So that's a little bit about myself.
No, that's really interesting journey. I was writing, first of all, a big thanks for your words about SweBAN. As you said, survived many years without it. Great to see it here now. So we are also very happy that this is finally happening. And I think SweBAN fulfills a very important gap in the ecosystem. That is that we try to connect because the power of early stage investing is in strengthening the networks. So if the networks are talking to each other, if a network in North knows what kind of deal flow is in South or in West, and they can still go in and support such startups, there is a huge value if angels are talking to each other, if networks are talking to each other. But coming to your background, it's very interesting that you mentioned that you have the experience of the intersection of tech and commercialization, because that's the entire challenge of startup building. All startups which are tech startups are trying to combine the tech side and the commercialization side. And then you also talked about your experience in the IP side and internationalization exposure. So I think from a startup side, you check all 4 boxes. But that's how a particular startup needs to be, and great to know about all that. Let's talk a little bit about VastAF, like for some of us who might not have that understanding from the background. So tell me, what's your why? What's the reason? What's the organization all about? So VastAF, if we can start there.
Okay. Well, so first of all, VastAF is maybe it's the English or it's a little bit short, excuse me, but the long name and maybe the official name is Västkustens Affärsänglar. So that's who we are. Maybe just a short introduction why I ended up with VastAF or why I'm there today. Because at 2021, when I come home to Gothenburg, I was given an opportunity, or I took an opportunity to work with investment full time. And I had actually quite late in life finished an MBA in Durham Business School in UK. And that MBA was, it was just all the things that you typically see in business school, but it also included entrepreneurship. And my dissertation was about angel investing. I asked the question, does it pay off to invest time in your startup? In other words, as an angel, do you get a better return if you stay passive, or do you get more money if you engage? And yeah, so that's and in order to finish that thesis, I had to interview people, and then I got in touch with Lennart Olsson in SweBAN. I later became an LP, and through that network, I was given a contact to VastAF, because the reason why I was interested in VastAF, I'll get into that a little bit later how we operate, but in SweBAN, it was a lot of learning. I took Lennart's training and I got a diploma in investing and related things, and I'm very much influenced in that, and I'm very appreciative. But as an LP, you don't get so much hands-on. SweBAN is really nice in the sense that they give you access, they give you visibility, and you have a voice. But you don't have any mandate, and it's rather passive. In fact, you could be completely passive. So to me, it's becoming, after the initial period, becoming more like an investment, in fact. And I was looking for something where I could actually make a little bit strong, a real contribution. And then VastAF turned up, and their framework allowed me to do that. So I was really keen on getting into that. And VastAF is investment company for that. So we are not really. I mean, we can say that we are a network because we are a bunch of people, but and sometimes people are in angels in certain areas. They are organized through closely connected networks where they meet, discuss, and they potentially make investments, normally individually or through an SPV. But we are an investment company, if you like. If you think of investor, but much, much smaller, that type of company we are. So when you invest in VastAF, you buy shares in VastAF, and that's how the company started a long time ago. And when we invest in companies, it's not the individual angels normally, but it's VastAF. We take cash from our balance sheet, we buy a piece of a company, and we put that company on our balance sheet. So it's a very simple business idea. You buy companies, you nurture them, you sell them. With the proceeds, you buy another company, and if we have a surplus, we return some of that to the shareholders. VastAF started up 2011 in fact. We've been around for quite some time. And this was happening in Trollhättan at the same in conjunction when Saab, the automotive, they were struggling hard, and about that time I think they closed. But we were lucky to get the CEO of Saab as our first chairman, Jan-Åke Jonsson. So he together with another core team, they started up, they built the company, and right about when I joined, a year later on, Jan-Åke said, I'm ready for a succession now. So that's when I was asked to do that. But we invest in early stage. We invest primarily in West Coast based companies, which means Västra Götaland and Halland, even though we can make exceptions. If it's something really exciting pops up somewhere else, we can actually consider that. So that's the basics. I mean, I can also share a little bit about the people, because a company is basically people, right? So today we are 22 shareholders. All of us, we have a quite similar profile, even though we've been working in many different industries and have different type of competences, which is something we are keen on maintaining. All of us have we are executives or some former senior manager normally the area. And today we are, I mean, I don't know exactly the average age, but we are, it's, I think I'm in the middle probably, or even maybe sometimes the younger. So most of us are not having a full-time job, but there are full-time jobbers as well. But so that's who we are. And we share the passion for startups. That's what brings us together. That's the glue. We like to see the startups grow. We like to help them, and that's mainly, I think, what drives the shareholders. So you don't really invest in VastAF like you saying, I have some money, but it's not enough to buy me a nice boat, so I'm going to put them in VastAF, and later on I'm going to cash in and buy me that. That's not really the reason why people invest in VastAF. And on top of that, it's not very liquid share either. So once you're in, you can get out, but it's not like Avanza, except you don't get out in a set. So it will not work like that.
Okay, very, very interesting, very interesting. So there are two parts to it, and let's try to dissect them a little bit. One is you talked a little bit about that you work with startups in the West Coast. So let's come to startups part later. First, try to understand a little bit more about VastAF as an organization. You said you are not a network, you are an investment company, and currently there are 22 shareholders. Is there a period of holding? Like, is it a perpetual company? Like, is the money forever? Because funds have a life cycle. You don't have a life cycle, I understand.
No.
Okay.
That's what. I mean, SweBAN is a fund, and there are a lot of other funds, and I do appreciate that type of organization. But we have a slightly different purpose. So we are not operating like a fund. We have no time limit. We can keep the companies for forever. So that's that's how we operate.
Yeah, and that's interesting to know, because sometimes the fund life cycle is a huge limitation also in the type of company that you can invest in, because you need the company to, and that's why where most of the deep tech companies or investments fail, because funds typically have shorter life cycles. Deep tech companies have a longer life cycle. Coming from your background of commercialization, they take 7 years, 7, 8, 9, 10 years for reaching commercialization, which means the investment priorities could be different when you are on a life cycle base. So that's interesting to know. You said 22 shareholders. Does that mean that those are all the people who invest, or do you also have external backers in the company, any LPs or any other forms of capital coming into the company, or is it the total capital that comes
No,
from?
that's it. There are no other shareholders and no other kind of capital. And one reason is probably explained by how we operate, because it's important for us to have a low burn rate, and you get a low burn rate for us through, we have no employees, no office, and we have a very small amount of fixed costs. We source IT and administration from a third party. So the hours the company gets is from the shareholders. Through the shareholder agreement, there is a requirement that you're going to put in at least 10 days per year, which is not a whole lot. I mean, 10 days per year is, it's 1 day per month. So most people actually put in more, but we are pretty flexible, and we're not, we're not really counting. But that's how we operate. And then we have an operating committee.
Okay.
I mean, we have a board, obviously, but the board is more from the formality, and we don't do a lot of work on the board. Most of the work is done through this operating committee. And that's where we do planning, organizing, discussing, taking issues, and distribute work. And this committee, we rotate in and out every year. So it's not like we have which I think is one of our trademarks. We don't have a group of people who make decisions year after year after year, and the rest of people are following and are happy. It's very important for us that, first of all, we are fully transparent. We don't have like sort of certain information that only some people have access to. Everything is open to everyone, and also all the major decisions are taken by everyone, so through a voting process. Whenever we're going to invest in a new company, everyone votes with their shares. If we get the qualified majority, we invest. Otherwise, we don't invest. So it's that part, I think, is very much appreciated and kind of a requirement for us. Yeah.
Okay, then let's try to, while we are on the organization side or the company side, let's try to understand the flow or the structure of how you work, because there is a pre-investment phase, there is an investment phase, and then there's a post-investment phase with every investment. So let's say in the pre-investment phase, how do startups or investments or cases reach out to you? Do you search for them? Do they reach out? How does that process work? And then once they are in, how does the process get assessed? Who gets to invest? Is it the entire company that goes on to invest in? Can angels invest on site? But let's come to that later. First is deal flow. How does that build up for an organization like you?
Well, that's probably one of the most important but also challenging part. Even though VastAF has been around since 2011, we're not Spotify. So if you listen to music, you go to Spotify. But if you're looking for money, not everyone is aware of VastAF. So we spend a lot of time with networking on the West Coast. You have to be well connected with key parties, like in our case, the universities, Almi, of course, the incubators. Connect is very important. All the pitch events. I mean, Gothenburg is not the only place, but obviously we source a lot from there. So I think we capture quite a bit. So networking, I think, is one element. But then also people reach out to us simply by Googling, and they find us through They send in their pitch we have a funnel, so they send in their pitch, and then we start to massage that. We have gatekeepers, we call it. So we start by a first pass filter, because we can quickly, unfortunately, most of the startups, they don't fit our requirements, which I think is typical. If you ask any company, they get 100 requests and probably one of them works. So the same for us. So we do a first pass filter. If we think it's interesting, we start, we take the first meeting, and then subsequently we work ourselves down the funnel. We create a DD team, team. We make some reports. We discuss, should we continue? Yes, we should continue. We do further digging. And eventually there is a big pitch for everyone. So all the shareholders can participate in the pitch, either face-to-face or online. And then we vote. So that's...
and this is typically done under the mandate of your operating team you talked about. That coordinates all of this process.
The operating team has a role to play in the beginning. But once we have identified a company that looks promising, we delegate all the work to a newly set up team, a virtual team, that consists of 3-4 people that we think are relevant. They understand the industry. We also try to do a little bit of load balancing, so everyone gets an opportunity to work. And they take it from there. Normally, obviously, we have interactions, but it's their responsibility to drive this to go.
Okay. Very interesting on how the process is built up. And once I'm tempted to go on the startup side, but I'll still wait there. But let's say once you have decided and voted, okay, this is the startup to go with or invest in. What happens afterwards? Because you were in your thesis time talking about, your dissertation was about angel investing on hands-off, hands-on, and how actively. What's the model? Are you kind of passive players or capital providers for startups? Are you active? Are you somewhere in between? And then what is the value add that VastAF brings to a startup X, for example?
Yeah, very good question. So if we think about the reason why sort of VastAF exists again, and the whole purpose and why people decide to buy shares in our company, it's to be close to companies, to get excited, but also to make a contribution, which I think we share with all business angels, by the way. And for us to do that, we cannot be passive. We cannot buy shares and then hope and pray and get an email 2 times per year.
Okay,
that's not our style. So we insist on a board seat, and if that's not possible, there could be reasons. We take place in the advisory board. If none of those are available, we don't invest. So that's and normally we select. The people from the DD team. Usually there is someone from there who feels most relevant. We always ask the founders what are the gaps, what would you like to see in your board, and we try to source the best possible candidate we can find. We have a fairly large variety of competences, generic stuff that you need in finance, HR, IT, tech, all those kind of things we have. But then we also have some verticals where we have a little bit more expertise, and we also have network. So it depends really on what they need. And that person is then responsible to be close to the company, report back to VastAF, together with the second person, which we call is the representing the owner, and that's the person who makes the voting for the for whenever the startup they have board meetings or annual meetings, and they make votes, and our independent person makes votes. So that's kind of the team we build around it. Yes.
Okay, very interesting. And what's the incentive for this person to work closely with the startup? Because you are 22 people, and then there are some investments coming in every year. So some people will be more involved. You said somewhere, I'll go back to my notes, that you mandate a minimum of 10 days per year. So that's your minimum commit on one side.
Yeah.
And then there might be startups which need a particular set of competence, and maybe there is one person who is extremely competent in a couple of areas, and many startups want that. So how do you balance that? And I'll kind of link that with a question which Christine has raised here. Richard, Christine, we here. Hi, Christine, great to have you here. I know you sometimes invest also aside, or is it always via VastAF? So question is, people who are in VastAF, the 22 people, can they also do side investment in a startup? Is that encouraged?
Yeah, so it's, I think without exception, the shareholders, they have, it's not like the 100% focus is on VastAF. We are one element. Some people give more attention, some people less attention, but usually they have other investment arms where they make either individual investments or through other organizations. So no issue with that, and that applies to myself obviously as well. So in terms of the incentive, so you don't get much money from one. It's not like we pay salary or pay some kind of compensation. In fact, why people like to, it's not difficult to find people who want to attend the boards. Usually people like to do it, and that's one area where you can make that contribution you're looking for. Why you join VastAF in the first place? It's not, or if you are an individual, it's not always that easy. You come in with a relatively small ticket and you want to sit in the board, and they say, "Nah, we have other people we need to put there." But when we go in there, you get an opportunity. So people like to do that. Very rarely there is a monetary compensation which they get from the company.
Okay.
VastAF doesn't make that type of contributions. So that's one area. The other thing we like to see, and I think you touched on that. I don't know if you want to talk about that later, but that's through the syndication.
And how does that work? Syndication work in your organization?
So after VastAF has decided on how much money we want to invest, often there is a piece left in the full round, or they can extend the round even. And then we ask for who is in the company is interested to make a side investment. So when they make that side investment, they get a separate line with their own name or their company into the cap table. So the alternative would be that a little bit like SweBAN does. They assemble all the syndication plus VastAF into one special purpose vehicle. But so far we have not been forced to do that, and we find it relatively convenient. As a result, the cap tables can get, it's not unusual to see VastAF companies with an additional 3, 4, 5 names on that belongs to VastAF. So let's say there is 600,000 left in the round, and we have 3 people who, as an example, of 4. Then they split that evenly, 150 each, and they make that contribution. And usually one of them also takes the board seat, because that's kind of helping them feeling motivated as well to be side investors. So, yeah.
But VastAF's investment shows up as single line item on cap table.
Yeah. So that's how it is. So VastAF will be usually the larger piece, and then there could be some smaller elements for the individuals. The only thing we have, which can be a little bit delicate, is when we if you think about the governance, when you have people syndicated, because their decision basis can be slightly biased. So we are trying to control that by, if you are syndicated, you don't get to vote when we take decisions on whether they're going to divest or doing add-on investments. So we are trying to be a little bit particular about that.
Okay. How does overall, because startups sometimes when they are raising from multiple sources. Somebody is taking a lead in the round. In some cases, startups are supplementing their total money requirement through some sort of public grant, funding, green loan of some kind, and then there is investment part of it. How does a typical constellation looks like? Are you guys the ones who are taking a lead in the round, or are you the only ones going into a startup round? How does that round construction look like typically?
Yeah, I'm gonna answer typically, because there are, as usual, exceptions. For example, we just finished one investment where we are probably the only one, I think. So but usually we don't consider ourselves an anchor. because what happens if you keep the company for 5-7 years, they are successful, they're going to make 2, 3, 4 more rounds. They grow in size, and our capacity is not unlimited. And we don't have the same muscles as, for example, Almi or other VC companies. So Anchor, I think we are not the right to be.
Okay, great. Let's come to the other part that we were talking about. So we now discuss VastAF, and thank you for sharing a lot of internal insights in terms for other organizations business angel networks, which will be set up or being set up. They can learn a lot from VastAF's experience. Let's go to the startup side and switch the hat. You said that you work with startups on the West Coast. How do you define West Coast? Part one. Part two is what kind of startups you work with. You said early stage, but early stage, can you break down the early stage? So let's start with what do you mean by West Coast? Okay. And then what kind of startups within West Coast are of interest to you?
Well, West Coast for us is Västra Götaland and Halland. But it's not like we are breaking a law or something if we would go a little bit into Småland or Skåne. It's not, I mean, we are pretty open-minded, but in reality, that's usually the answer we give. And also that happens to be where we source our companies. So that's, the profile of the companies, I think, like all business angels, they have many have quite similar requirements, but they're not identical. So I give you the list for us, and if you pass all those requirements, we are happy to invest. So the first thing is that we like to see B2B companies. We are not qualified. We don't have a lot of experience in B2C. They are a little bit more difficult to predict. Obviously, the result can be amazing and probably much better, but the risk is also different. So stay with B2B. In terms of valuation, we are comfortable with, in the 20-30 range here in Gothenburg. I suspect that it's a little bit more pricey perhaps in Stockholm, but I'll tell you what I know from here. So in the 20-30, but we have been up to 40, but I think we capped there and we've been below 20 as well. So that's normally, we like to get about 5%, but we can be flexible on that as well. That can mean that we invest around 1 million initially, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. So that's, if we think about the company itself, there are a couple of things we have to see, otherwise it's not for us. So the first one is that we want them to be able to scale. The business model has to be scalable, which is, I think, everyone is agreeing to, but we do pay attention to that. So that means that if we want to see that, for example, if the revenue goes up 10%, we want the EBITDA or the profit line to go up 20%. So that it's not like so that means that usually not so labor intense. Hardware, you can have hardware, but more challenging. Other kind of things. The other thing we pay a lot of attention to is that we want it to have a competitive edge. We would not want to see, let's say you have a fantastic idea and you get to the market and it's exploding, but you don't want to see a new company seeing that idea and duplicating that and be operating within 6 months, for example. That would be a no for us. So we would like to have ideally 24 months. And that means for us often university, research, professors, patents, or other ways of protecting the company. So that's one element we pay attention to. And of course, all the other things. The team has to be good. We can tolerate gaps, but we have to agree on those gaps. We have to agree on a plan how to fill those gaps. We have to be, we're going to work with the team, so we have to be, chemistry has to be there. You need to understand each other. Both sides need to be humble and respectful and listen. Yeah, that's usually what we go for. And then we have a couple of verticals. We don't invest in things we have no clue of. We like to make a contribution. We don't need to be expert in the area, but we have to have some feeling for what's going on. And yeah, so that's.
And what would those areas be? For example, you said a few areas where you like to invest. What are those areas which you are comfortable in investing?
Well, when I started up as a chairman, the first thing I did was to sort of make an analysis of what are the competence the company know. What kind of stuff does our shareholder know? In fact, what is their experience? Turns out that we have a lot of experience in medtech, life science. So, and that is quite fortunate because in Gothenburg, the deal flow is quite relevant in that space. In fact, probably if we wouldn't be paying attention, we could have 100% medtech. So
Interesting.
We don't want. Then we have being Gothenburg again, mobility, automotive, stuff like that is something we have in our company. We do know something about energy transition, so that's something we appreciate as well. And digital services. So those are the 4 areas. But it's not like we are excluding anything necessarily if you are not in there. This is more to sort of explain better who we are. But yeah, and I think we added probably this year and last year we added I think it was almost 7 new shareholders. We did a little bit of transition, so there was some people who've been around for a very long time and wanted to retire, so we bought them out, and then we replaced with a new team. And that means we have some new areas of competences that we like to utilize.
So it's always some sort of competence match that you're looking for on the other side. Like if you can go in and make a real difference in the startup, then that's a good fit for you. And you mentioned medtech, life science as an area, and that makes me a little bit curious. We were discussing prior to when we started this conversation, we'll having our own discussion a little bit about our talk today. West Coast, what is the ecosystem like? If somebody wants a very, very simple capture of what's West Coast known for, what is the ecosystem good at? What's the secret sauce of this ecosystem? So how would you describe that?
Well, I mean, first of all, I want to respectfully say I don't have the full map of Sweden, so I cannot say that we are better or worse than anyone else. So I'll stick to what I know from here. We are quite good at research. Companies are not afraid of spending money on research, and we have quite a lot of deep tech. We are AI Sweden, for example, is here. Chalmers is very relevant, and through Astra we have the GoCo initiative with Sahlgrenska. So our profile happens. I think we should be fortunate, or if this is for some other reasons, but it happens to be that a lot of companies that fit our requirements. I mean, now I'm talking about deep tech or research are in here. I hear that in Stockholm it's much more software. You can see a lot more, probably more B2C, and I think that could very well be because I don't think we have as much of that here. So that's that's roughly I think how I would describe. And now I'm talking about. Keep in mind that I sort of have. I'm not exactly tunnel vision, but I'm describing what I'm seeing and what I like to see. So there are a lot of things I don't see, which obviously goes outside. But that happens to be the case. I forgot to mention one thing. I have my notes on the side. When we look for companies, we do it also for the purpose, obviously, to make money. It's not only that we want to be together with nice founders and have a nice time. We also like to sell the company one day and make money. In fact, VastAF we have a requirement that we want to do 25% IRR on a rolling 10 years. and that's which is industry standard. I remember from my own research, but it's not trivial to make that. In fact, we took that goal a few years ago, and today we are slightly below. So we're quite happy with that. But that means that when you make an investment, you have to see, can this generate the type of return I'm looking for? And we typically look for 10x if we think the company we will stay with the company for 5 to 7 years. And that means we have to understand how will the company be evaluated? Is it possible that their plans they have can actually bring that type of revenue or profit? And if we don't think so, then we either need to work on the evaluation or we don't invest.
Okay. Amazing. Richard, this has been such an interesting conversation, and I see a lot of interesting profiles here in the chat. So I hope people can connect with each other. A lot of different kind of experiences in our audience right now. Great that everybody could join us. To round off our discussion, Richard, I think SweBAN's mission is to build a very strong backbone of angel networks in Sweden, a place like in an ideal condition, these networks are talking to each other, they are sharing deal flows with each other, they are backing each other up in tough times. They have through SweBAN a platform which gives them visibility and they can compound their effect and they can talk to venture capital and all that. If people are starting up, or some individuals or some groups are setting up similar investment companies or starting these networks, what would be your advice based on your experience? What are 1, 2, or 3 things which are needed to create robust investment networks or companies or regional ecosystems? Whichever way you want to answer it.
Well, I mean, the basics obviously that you need to be a strong team. And I would suggest that probably you are 2, 3, 4 persons who discuss and you agree that you want to do this. Through your network, you can probably become, let's say, 10, which I think is probably, my guess is that that's roughly, I don't think you want to be below. Because keep in mind, first of all, you need capital. So so, and my suggestion is that you meet shares from the beginning and build the cash pool rather than the alternative would be to call in capital for every investment, which I, not preferred in my mind, but can happen as well. The other thing, if you're less than 10, you're going to struggle to be active. If your idea is to be active with the companies and help them, it's going to be challenging after some time if you're not enough people. And I suggest as well that if for us that if you are close to each other geographically. For example, in our case, we have regular shareholder meetings where we meet face to face, and we take in after work, or we have some other kind of wine tasting or stuff like that, and then you can meet face to face, which is important, I think, because the company will only be successful, I think, if you have some activities. So, for example, when I joined, there was a little bit of sense that it was not enough action. And if you start a company like this, you have to have kind of a plan. And ideally, as usual, someone have to have a driver. Someone is to put in an energy and love to do this. So that's... Then after that, I think the basics. You have to have a common agreed framework. You agree on what you're going to invest in, which is not necessarily given. You can have a lot of different opinions, and then I think you're going to struggle because whenever you find a company, there are always going to be negatives, and you don't want to have too much of that. So a good and a governance, I think you need to set up as well. But after that, I think it's all about networking. You cannot live on an island. You have to network. You have to become relevant. You want people to call you, send you emails, say, Richard, I have this company. Can you please listen to them? You need that kind of thing. But
very interesting advice, especially your point on setting up and the way you linked it to the size, because size is kind of going to affect your capital deployment, like how and how you structure. Do you kind of immediately get in capital upfront or have it on call? And then also size affects your time, for example, in VastAF, you said you have a minimum commitment requirement of 10 days per year. Like it's still stuck in my head. And which means that for a company or a network to be effective, to be assessing the deal flow, taking decisions, then actually doing the value add, you need to be a significant quantum of people if you are doing it all part-time. Yeah, so that's really interesting. So a lot of amazing insights coming in today's talk, Richard. We would like to thank you for joining our SweBAN talks today.